He is one of the classiest, most talented guys you will ever find in sports broadcasting. He works currently at Turner and CBS. The list goes on. It is the great Spero Dedes with us. Follow him on Twitter at Spero Dedes. I'm Bryan Fenley. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley, and I work for Fox Sports Radio as a national anchor. Spero, it has been a while since we reconnected. I am so grateful for your time. And before I dive into what it was like being in the NBA bubble and preparing for the NFL season with CBS, when was a time in your life where you took the biggest chance on yourself and by blind faith, it worked out with the result magnificently for you?
Well, first of all, Bryan, it's good to be with you, my old buddy. I feel like I haven't seen you in about 20 years, and we haven't
Exactly.
talked. Really happy to see your success, and as I've told you many times, no surprise. You know, I knew very early when I heard your tape that you were going to be doing really good things in this business. So that's been awesome to see. In terms of betting on myself, for me, it's easy. Coming out of high school, having to convince my parents and my father specifically that I wanted to do broadcasting for a career. I grew up in North Jersey. My father owned a diner here that he owned and operated for almost 40 years. And it was kind of the unsaid thing that my brother and I would eventually take it over and run it. And then that would be it. And, you know, for a long time, that's how we thought our lives would go. But as I kind of came through my teenage years and obviously was a huge sports fan and became infatuated with watching games and listening to games on the radio, Marv Albert and Mike Breen and all the great broadcasters that we had in New York, I just kind of started to dream of doing that for a living and doing that as a job. And I had to convince my father that I was determined enough to really see it through and do the work necessary. And then B, and the more pressing issue I had was convincing him to send me to college and pay my tuition at a very expensive school to do broadcasting as opposed to business. So we compromised. He ended up sending me to Fordham on a business degree with a goal to minor in broadcasting. But after a couple of weeks, I was failing my finite math class and told him I was either going to have to drop out completely or we were going to have to go the broadcasting route completely. So luckily I convinced him. I guess my powers of persuasion were strong at that age. And it's been really cool because now he's my biggest fan. He never misses a game. And it's just kind of really been nice to be on this journey with him and to share it with my mother as well.
Spero, you always believed in yourself, but you kind of touched on this. When did your family budge and say, okay, you believe in yourself, but now we believe in you, we believe in your potential, and we can see that what you want to do is going to happen?
Well, I think they saw early on that I was determined. I mean, once I got to Fordham, I can remember literally the first day moving onto campus, going to the radio station and basically applying for a job. And so I think they saw that drive that I had early. And so, you know, initially they're like, all right, maybe there is something to this. Maybe he can, earn a few bucks and actually do this for a career. And then as the years went on, while I was at Fordham and they saw me really just continuing, doing the internships and they started hearing me call Fordham games, as part of WFUV, which is just amazing 50,000 watt radio station on campus in the middle of New York City that affords the broadcast students with just a once in a lifetime opportunity to get experience while you're still a college student. Once they saw that, I think slowly I was able to sell them on the fact that this was indeed something that I was going to at least try to pursue and try to get my foot in the door as soon as I graduated.
It certainly has paid off for you in a grand way. And recently, Spero, you were able to take part in the Orlando bubble. And I would have to think, Spero, like going in before you got there, you had these preconceived beliefs of what it was going to be like. You probably also had people telling you what to expect. And then you were reading up on what the setup might be like. But what was an element of the environment that shattered your wildest expectations when you got there? Say it astounded you the most.
Well, like you said, before going there, obviously I'd watch the seeding games and listening to Kevin Harlan and Ian, two guys who have been mentors of mine and broadcast heroes of mine forever. I mean, I was just first blown away from afar at how good the games looked and sounded like on TV.
Yes.
I mean, it was just incredible because I think we all had low expectations. Maybe we should have uh, been more kind of confident, knowing the NBA and the track record of Adam Silver. But then getting there, and the night before I started my games, I actually went over to the arena with Brian Anderson, who's a colleague of mine and another person who I've looked up to in this business for a long time, one of the greats that we have in the industry. We went over to the arena during a game just to kind of check out the booth, get the lay of the land. And here we were in the building 5 minutes before an NBA playoff game was about to start, and you could literally hear a pin drop. There was no music, obviously no fans. It was like being in a library. The players and the teams were out there warming up, and we just kind of looked at each other like, this is just weird. I mean, you can literally hear someone, at the top of the rafters in the arena, the maintenance person speaking.
Yeah.
And, we were 5 minutes away from an NBA playoff game. And for anyone who's been to an NBA postseason game, the intensity, the energy that's in the building, and it just felt so different. And then once the game started with that Nat sound and the fan noise that they are piping into the arenas, and with the speakers pointed down towards the court so that the players can really soak that atmosphere in, it just kind of transformed. It was really like watching a game on a Hollywood sound stage, something like that. It was like watching a game on a film lot. It was just very, very weird. And but the more we were there, the more games we did and experienced, it just kind of became normal. Working from a broadcast booth that was enclosed by plexiglass and having a piece of plexiglass in between myself and my analyst, Stan Van Gundy, who was great and handled it perfectly. It just took a lot of getting used to with the stats person who's usually right next to me, handing me notes and having to do more hand signals, and him using a whiteboard to give me the numbers and the stats that I need during the course of the game. So little things that, most of which the viewer at home probably wouldn't notice, but for us being there, it just, everything about it felt different. Which actually, we do so many games and this becomes repetition after a while. It actually was a little refreshing to have to adjust and to see the games and experience our work, I think, through a different lens, so to speak.
Well, I'm sure the plexiglass certainly challenged your ability to kind of develop that chemistry with Stan Van Gundy, although it didn't appear like that was the case over the air. You guys had a great, fluid, seamless chemistry that was going about. How did you develop that? Like, how did you and Stan, even off the air, get to kind of talking through, all right, here's how we're going to do this? And then when it came to being on the air, it seemed, Spero, that it was just normal for you guys. It just felt like nothing had changed.
Yeah, I appreciate that, first of all. Second of all, you do this long enough and you work with so many different analysts. And a lot of times you have no prior relationship to them. So, if you're lucky, you can maybe grab a meal, when you get to the city for the game, maybe the night before, to kind of get to know each other a little bit, build a rapport. With Stan, I didn't meet him until our production meeting, which was via Zoom the morning of that first game. So, I had never met Stan prior to that. Obviously, I'd coached a ton of his games that he worked, and he was the head coach of the Magic when they were in the NBA Finals against the Lakers, who I was working for in 2009. So obviously, I've watched him from afar. I heard a bunch of his games when he was working with Ian during the seeding round and during the season, and I just thought he was fantastic. Just a natural TV person who understands and can process things very quickly. So, we had a chance to kind of talk a little bit pregame, asking him kind of what he looks for from his play-by-play person, and Stan was just phenomenal. As good as he is on air, he is even better off it. Just a very giving partner. It's really nice to work with someone who just has such a supreme confidence and knowledge of the game and a great sense of humor that you can kind of take him anywhere,
Yes.
And he'll just get it. He's really, really good. I think he's gonna have a long career if he chooses to do this long term. So he made it easy. He was great.
Well, both of you were great. And then While you were there, Spiro, obviously some history took place in the bubble with the protesting, and you called it
Mm.
surreal. I mean, here you are about to call a game, and then there's a protest that's going on. And it certainly led to more conversations to social justice and the hope that this will lead to more change. Where were you when all of this was unfolding that day when, maybe you were supposed to call this certain game and all of a sudden, hold on here?
Yeah, so ironically, the day that Milwaukee walked out, we had the second game that was scheduled for that afternoon. So just as we were leaving the hotel, I actually was just about to leave my room, and I had the Bucks game on, and I heard that Milwaukee had not come out for their pregame warmups. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. We had heard the rumors that maybe Toronto and Boston were going to potentially walk out in protest. And so this was the first that any of us had heard that the Bucks were thinking of doing that. So by the time we got to the arena, Milwaukee had made it clear that they were not going to play. And then immediately our thought was, okay, well, what about the other teams today? Because this has to have some kind of a trickle down effect. And, little did we know, lo and behold, a couple of minutes later, we found out that both Oklahoma City and Houston and the rest of the teams that were scheduled to play that day were not going to play. And we basically were in our booth watching the pregame show, listening to Stephanie Reddy, who was our on-site reporter, Rebecca Harlow, who just did a phenomenal job reporting what was happening directly from the locker room and the NBA. And it really had this feeling of kind of surreal, this has never been something that we've seen, certainly in our lifetime. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And look, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, I really have a lot of respect for the players for doing what they did. I think it took a lot of courage in the face of, a lot of chatter and vitriol, I think, from both sides. And I think anytime you can do that and put your own self-interest to the side for the betterment of the country and people that you're trying to support, I think takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, no question about it. Spero Dedes is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. And then when did you find out that play would be resumed and then that you would get the opportunity to call games after that little delay?
So Wednesday was the boycott. I think we had started to hear rumors Thursday morning, once the players announced that they were going to play. I can't remember if it was Thursday or Friday, but it was like a full 24 hours before we started to kind of get the word through back channels that, okay, play was going to resume. Then it became, well, what's the schedule going to look like? Are they just going to move Wednesday's games to Friday? Because initially we thought Friday was the return date. Then we found out that they were going to push it back to Saturday. So we had an extra couple of days at the pool. We were able to relax a little bit, and everyone kind of caught their breath. And, I will say once the word came down, I think there was a lot of relief. All the work that's been put in, it would have been a shame, I think, to leave it kind of halfway done. So I think the players made a stand. They made their voices heard, and certainly the country was watching, and they had everyone's attention, and play went on. So I think it worked out for both sides.
And when you have all the players together in one spot, I think their voice holds so much stronger than, let's say, if there was a stoppage and that they had to kind of push things and end things because one player's over here, one player's over there. But if you have that collective voice, Spero, I think that there's such a power to that, like you said. Now you're looking at the NFL and you're focused on that. What are the intricacies of this season, this fall, as far as the NFL broadcasts and how it's going to look different for you at CBS?
Oh man, where to begin? Everything about this NFL season is different. We were just talking off air, and usually by this point we would have seen 4 preseason games. We'd have an idea of what these teams would look like on opening day. Now we haven't had that. The roster cut down date is a little bit later in the day. And so, it's just, there's an element of the unknown that is, making this a little bit more challenging. Then you throw in the COVID stuff, in terms of our broadcast booth with the plexiglass and the 6 feet of social distancing in our booth. Anyone who's never been to a broadcast booth, and most people haven't, can't possibly understand kind of the chaos, the controlled chaos, as I like to call it, with the spotter who's pointing to my board of who makes the tackle and who's the ball carrier and who's making the interception or whatever's happening on a particular play. I'll have the stats person to my left and obviously my analyst, Adam Archuleta, a few feet to my right. Now it's going to be kind of challenging in how we can interact. So I think right up until opening day, that first Sunday on September the 13th, we are kind of going to be, talking about how things are going to go. But until we get to the booth that Sunday morning, I don't think any of us are going to know how it feels. And to be honest with you, I think everyone's embracing this, for the reason I mentioned before. We've done this a certain way for so long and for your entire career. I think it's going to inject a little energy into all of us and kind of force you to change, adapt, maybe innovate how we do this. And it'll be interesting to see kind of what changes are permanent and what changes are temporary in the short term as we all kind of navigate through this pandemic.
Spero, my last question for you. Knowing that you've worked with Adam Archuleta before, how do you feel like that long-term partnership is going to help you sort through the chaos of figuring out the broadcast booth during this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think the fact that I've worked with Arch now for 3 years and not only worked together, but we've really kind of gotten close and become friends, having that familiarity with someone makes this a ton of the way easier, a lot easier to do. There's just, as I said earlier, there's just so many different things, so many curveballs, and to have to do that and experience that with someone who you don't necessarily have a rapport with would make it a little bit more challenging. Arch is great, great sense of humor. And, I empathize with Arch because the analyst, really has to get into the game tape to know what a team looks like. So for Adam to prepare for this season, almost blindfolded in a way, having no tape of these teams, is going to be challenging. But knowing him, he's such a student of the game, and he sees and processes the game just so completely. I think he's going to be fantastic, and I just can't wait to get to Jacksonville for the opening Sunday. It's going to be fun.
We can't wait to listen to it. Spero Dedes, the best in the business, one of the classiest guys you will meet. Spero, thank you so much for doing this. I'm Bryan Fenley, and look forward to reconnecting soon, and can't wait again to watch and listen to you in Jacksonville.
Thanks, Bryan. Kind words. Congrats on everything, brother, and we'll talk soon.